Welcome to our City Matters. My name is Tashreeq Trubadi. A very good evening. It all started with a very angry man and a bucket of feces that had led to the removal of the Cecil John Rhodes statue. It's been 4 months since that campaign, and we're asking just how far it has come. But let's revisit just how far we've come along.
Today, it's a very, very important day. Part of what we're seeing today is the rewriting of history. So what we're seeing today is we're seeing a new chapter in this country's history, whereby, truth can be spoken to power. We are actually speaking truth to power right now when we've actually pushed management of UCT to remove statues such as this one, statue that represents a very troubling past, a colonial past in which actually our people were murdered, our people were killed, our people were, issues of genocide, people were basically, destroyed in numbers because of the color of their skin. So our people were being dehumanized by people such as Cecil John Rhodes. And we're saying now today, it is the restoration of our people's dignity. So we are excited, of course. And this is a narrative that we as students are claiming, nobody else. Because we've pushed management to the point that they were left with no choice but to remove the statue. Of course, this is not about the statue. I think this is a message that must be understood out there. This is not about the statue.
It's a victory for all black students because what Cecil Rhodes stood for has been deeply entrenched in society and has led to white privilege becoming the norm, whereas we're just trying to redefine. It's not only about the statue, it's about the institutionalized racism. It's about the fact that black, lives don't matter. It's about the fact that I've had, few black lecturers teaching me, whereas we have very gifted, and astute academics who are not given that opportunity. So this is victory for all of us.
Ivory towers and corridors of white power are not untouchable. Now, the heroic act of Tumani Makwele, which sparked a tidal wave of solidarity from UCT to Oxford University, from Rhodes University to Columbia University, this act has helped demystify colonial enclaves of white dominance, all disguises of white power, and the preservation of white privilege must fall.
And I think going forward, people have been saying what now? And will this be sustainable? I think for the fact that we've been here for a whole month, proves that it's sustainable. We need to be addressing issues of staff transformation and also issues of the LGBTI community. I thank you.
As now we are also part of this movement. We are not just in there in solidarity, we are part of them. And like you've heard, I'm staying here at Azania House. This moment is really so overwhelming. Let me just allow me to say, wow, wow, wow. It's a day full of mixed emotions for various reasons, for various different people. We are declaring today that the spirit of oppression will no longer control us. We believe that the altar of colonialism is crushed and will not have no power over us. It's long overdue that all are seen equally as employees, staffs, students and citizens of this country. We accept and understand that there are different roles to play.
Getting management to take the statue down is actually the bigger victory here. But we must remember that this campaign actually comes out of a long history of engagement by UCT staff, by UCT students, with the university administration to confront or deal with issues of transformation. And actually today for me, it marks a turning point in the struggle to decolonize our university. The fall of the statue signifies that the era of talk without action is done. And this moment also provides us with an opportunity to rethink our relationship to this city and all of its residents. So we celebrate this victory today whilst being mindful that the struggle has just begun and that there's still a lot of work to do before we can say that UCT is truly an African university. Thank you.
More than just a statue, it seems, and of course the deep flavored Pan-Africanism that we saw come out in that particular feature. And one of the things that stood out for me was a comment there saying that UCT remains a colonial enclave of white dominance. And it's this dominance that trying to see if there is such a thing. And for us to have this conversation, we have Professor Krenzo Dean with us this evening. He is the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. Professor, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Also with us from the Student Representative Council is Thembelihle Maisa. Thank you so much for your time. Professor, let's get into it. UCT, a lily white institution, an institution that continues to practice almost the skewed after effects of this thing called apartheid. How do you react to that? You're the Deputy Vice-Chancellor.
Well, all those terms you use, you can argue about till the cows come home.
Yeah.
And it's really important for us to be describing the situation now as accurately as we can.
And how would you describe it?
So, the University of Cape Town is like many institutions in the country going through a process of trying to understand what its responsibilities are to these commitments to change that I think that everybody in the university, certainly in the university management, might feel. So to describe the university as a lily white institution is really not describing the full complexity of what UCT is all about.
But this process, Prof, 20 years, why is it that we still have a staff complement, and if reports are correct, you only have 30 black professors?
Well, so that's a really important question to ask. And the question comes to be put at the feet of a single university at the moment. Now, I don't want to be defensive, but you're looking at a national problem here, not just in the universities, in the whole country. And a part of, I think, coming to understand why, in racial terms, and I want to say to you, you can analyze the situation not just in race terms. There are many sociologies here which need to be brought into trying to understand what this. And I don't want to be highfalutin, but there are many ways to understand inequality, oppression. Okay? Many ways.
You're taking me back to 2008 now, Prof. You headed up a commission. In fact, the commission came out with a report called the Krenzo Dean Report. Now, it was sparked by an actual racial incident. Based on your report, you argued that there is a problem of racial inequality in this country, be it that you have physical acts of perhaps some white people treating black people like, animals, or if it's cases such as this, calling for white dominance as such in tertiary institutions to be broken down. Since 2008, Professor, you've also been at the University of Cape Town. Surely we could have gotten somewhere with this?
Well, you have to listen to what I'm trying to say about the complexities of these difficulties here. Right now, there are something like only 30 black women professors in the country. not just UCT. So you have an incredible situation here where we are having to confront why it is, and it's really important for us to understand why this is so, why we have such an underrepresentation of particular fractions of our society in positions of influence. You can talk about the academy, but it's not just in the academy. I mean, just right now, a report has come out about the representation of people in positions of management in the private sector, and it looks no different. So we're needing to understand what the structural conditions are which are producing these really tragic, and they are tragic, situations that we've got in the country. And so what has UCT done? UCT has, over the last 20-25 years, been working with a lot of support from donors, with support from government, even in trying to deal exactly with this facet of the problem that you are raising. And that we have had so little success is something that we are needing to understand why that is so. Why is that so?
Well, let's speak to the students. Timberlishli, are you guys not sensitive to the fact that there is this process, that, you know, it's a much broader issue than just expecting the Deputy Vice Chancellor here to do something about?
Look, I think that it would be very unrealistic for us to think that, I mean, after years of oppression and after years of systemized and institutional favorism and dominance upon one race, it will be I think would be in fact delusional to think that this can happen overnight. But it really does worry me that we are 20 or 21 years down the line and we're still sitting with three professors. I feel like 5 years, maybe 10 years afterwards, they will not perhaps think that, okay, cool, now we have about 2 or 3. What's going on? It can't be that still after 21 years, we're still at 3. It must be quite complex then, because it's something that I definitely understand that there's been some work put behind it, and perhaps we should be asking the question of why is it then taking so long? Does it mean in the next 20 years we're going to have another 6?
But when do we begin to deal with this problem? Are you expecting chancellors to take leadership in this respect, or shouldn't you be camping at the office of Dr. Blaine Nzimande?
Well, this is quite a complex question. I mean, if you look at even in terms of Dr. Blaine Nzimande or Mr. Blaine Nzimande, I'm not quite sure, for example, I think they have all these, I mean, they do have policies on transformation, and they're also they speak quite avidly about how this is what should be happening. But also, I mean, during the Rhodes Must Fall and that kind of campaign, we rarely had much interaction from Blaine Nzimande to, you know what I mean, to begin with. So I think it's going to take a whole holistic approach. And as well, even if we think about academics, how do we become academics? It's from undergrad to postgrad and so on and so on. So if a majority of black students don't have funding for postgrad, where do they think we're going to get these black academics from? I think that's another problem. People have been looking at, okay, we have 3 now, but how are we going to increase that number? And it's not a matter of numbers, like let's just drag out people from, you can't do that with academics. People need to be qualified. And I think one of the fundamental issues would be funding. A majority of, I'm not going to say majority, but from my experience as a young black youth who is like first generation university, my parents or my elders, they think you go into university, you get a degree, and then you get out, you get a job. Yeah. You can't go home and then say, I want to do postgrad. It's like there's more money involved. I think a lot of our parents don't understand that. And there's also, okay, I want to be an academic, I want to study further, but you don't have the means because financial aid will only go so far as undergrad. So I think even when we speak about getting those academics going forward, we really do not just need to look at the numbers, but the process of getting there.
So do you think it was perhaps unfair in the way that the Rhodes Must Fall movement has shaped its arguments, that it expected the university to do something about it? Well, it had removed the statue, but at the end of the day, you were making some other demands. You were calling for, centric education to be done away with, etc. Do you think that UCT should have been absolved of this responsibility?
I think with what Rhodes Must Fall was saying, I don't at all agree. I'm not trying to say that they shouldn't have perhaps had those demands or other things involved. But I really do think that sometimes to get management's attention, you have to throw a bit of shade. You're going to have to become more critical. I fundamentally believe that no one is ever gotten transformation by just asking for it quite nicely. Sometimes you really do have to push. And I think that I completely and devotedly support Rhodes Must Fall. And Rhodes Must Fall wasn't just about institutional racism. We did speak about things like disabilities and sexuality as well. And the fact that we do have a Eurocentric education is quite problematic. I'm a student that's in the politics department, and I find the majority of the scholars that we read are quite Eurocentric. Even if we want to speak about African problems, it would appear that we are still, in 2015, approaching African problems in Eurocentric theories, which I find...
Yeah, I'd like to go to Professor that. Are we teaching about Du Bois in university? Are we, stressing a Pan-Africanist approach to dealing with African problems?
Well, it depends. These things go backwards and forwards. So Du Bois, as he's pronounced, has been taught for 50 years in some people's departments. These are not new things. Fanon has been taught in psychology in universities around the country. These are not new things. It's not new. It's not as if these things haven't been there. They come and they go. And so we really have to have a big understanding about what it is when we talk about curriculum transformation.
And so what would that be, Professor?
So we need to find ways. So I'll tell you my own position. I'm not talking for the university now. My own position is that we need to have the best knowledge that is available to deal with the problems of the human condition. That's what we must do. And we must be open in that particular context to understanding that marginalized knowledges, like African epistemologies, which have been marginalized, need to be brought into our perspectives too. So we need to have the full range of all our capacities to understand the full range of all the conditions which we are confronting.
Do you feel UCT hasn't fallen short in any way?
Well, as I say, these things come and go. So there are some people at UCT now, in my view, who are at the very cutting edge of these things, as all of these things were happening. Just to give you an illustration, I know of about 4 or 5 courses where Fanon was being taught. 4 or 5 courses. So it's not as if Fanon isn't there. Even in architecture, people are teaching things like Fanon. In public health, people are teaching Fanon. So it's not as if these things are not there, but they could go away also. And so you're in a situation where you constantly, and this is where I absolutely agree, you need pressure on people so that they don't get complacent. And you do
Has UCT been complacent? Or recognizing the fact that
academics do get into a state where this is what I'm really good at. Yeah. And it's really hard to shift an academic to move from what he or she, or however you wish to describe yourself, what is best at. And so people need pressure. I have absolutely no problem with that.
Ms. Maisa, are you going to be increasing the pressure on UCT?
I think definitely. I think that this movement has it's given students a sense of, I don't want to say control, but now we honestly do know that because our future is in our hands, it really is sometimes up to us to put that pressure on UCT. And I completely agree. I'm taking a course where my lecturer speaks fluent Xhosa, he's a white man, and a majority of our course content is based on South African things. Right now we're going through Marikana. So I definitely know that there is that side of UCT where certain departments have really just gone almost all the way out. And those lectures have made African issues and contemporary South African issues part of their course material. They incorporated, because obviously they couldn't do Marikana 4 years back or whatever, but because now it's the current issue now. So we're approaching labor and labor laws from looking at from that contemporary thing. But I really do think that one or a handful of 10 departments out of the entirety, there's still a lot more work to be done.
And that's in fact where we're going to go to when we come back from the break. Was the Rhodes Must Fall movement, or was the actual falling of Rhodes a mere symbolic one, or is there much more to scratch beneath the surface? My name is Tashirik Trubari. It's Our City Matters. Let's take a break. We return shortly.
MLT Corp has a seamless solution to your private and corporate transport needs. Visit mltcorp.co.za today.
Right, it is Our City Matters. My name is Tashrik Trubade. A very good evening to you once again. We are talking about the Rhodes Must Fall. Now, Rhodes has, of course, fallen. It was a large piece of concrete that, of course, overlooked the sports ground at the University of Cape Town Upper Campus. And we're taking a look at more than 4 months since Rhodes has officially fallen. What progress has been made, if any, can be made. In the studio this evening, we have Professor Crane Soudine. He is the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. From the Student Representative Council, the SRC, we have Thembelihle Yani also in studio with us. Professor, I want to come back to these broader problems that we face. I mean, you know, we may never get there in the next 10 years. Sometimes these things fall by the wayside. Dr. Blade Nzimande may have to deal with, you know, setting up more universities than dealing with actual issues of transformation. But that's where I want to go to. Part of your recommendation of the Commission, the Crane Soudine report, speaks about the need for a committee to almost police transformation in this country. Do you believe that enough work has been done? Are we moving anywhere?
Well, it wasn't about policing transformation. And I need to explain that because whenever you do that, you are always going to institute ways in which people are going to resent what you are trying to do. So it's really crucial that we build not so much a campaign, but a kind of impetus in the country around those things that we feel strongly about.
Yeah.
And so what that recommendation was really about was trying to find ways about getting this conversation going on a national basis. And part of it has been begun. So you know that Professor Makgoba is leading up this ministerial committee on the part of Minister Nzimande, and they're thinking. They're in an argument in that committee itself about how best to do this.
Yeah, and that's what I want to go to, because the report that came across, you know, spoke about Mr. Makgoba being, you know, full of enthusiasm, defining his job, etc., in terms of, in some way or the other, bringing transformation into universities. But there's also been much, opposition to some of his positions in how he wants to achieve this transformation, that many feel that there are even, you know, chancellors, etc., from many other universities that are stonewalling this particular process.
Because essentially he came up with a mechanical instrument. I mean, that's what the problem was. He came up with an instrument which he thought would be able to, you would be able to like do a temperature check in any minute and to apply this to an institution, and you would get a reading about what the state of transformation is on a campus. And it really was just about the employment equity, largely the employment equity numbers. So those things are important at one level. So you do want representativity on our campuses in the country. Let me just say again, not just in racial terms. In demographic terms, and demography must mean something more than race. It must mean region, language, religious status, class. It must mean all of those things. And we're nowhere near having a conversation like this. We are completely fixated around one dimension of inequality in the country. We've got to get to the complexity of it. So this instrument that he developed looks at one really important, and I'm not going to deny that for a second. People want to have in their spaces other people who look like them. Right? People want that. And so you have to go some way towards dealing with that. But I want to say to you, people who look like you can be really bad also. They can be bad people. So the fact that somebody looks like me gives me no comfort at all. Gives me no sense that I'm in the space of somebody that I can trust. So we must be building, I want to say this to you, we must be building levels of trust amongst ourselves in this country. And those levels of trust are not going to come on the basis of what we look like. It's on the basis of our capacity to be able to talk with one another, where we can understand what positions that we are taking around particular things. And that's absolutely crucial. There's no compromising all of that. When we talk about bringing this country into another space, it's not just student spaces, it's the whole country, it's townships. It's when people are on a bus, it's when people are talking to each other in employee-employee relationships. The levels of trust and respect that we need for each other are not there. You've got a manifestation of the stuff at the universities at the moment, but we have real difficulty in the country in moving to a point where there is a sufficient degree of trust with each other. Where I don't, when I see you across the road, decide that you constitute a danger to me, which is how much of the psychology in this country works.
Is that what we need to do? It's much bigger than just the university classroom?
Undoubtedly. But also I think even when you look at transformation, I'm glad that Professor Sudine actually mentioned in the fact that we seem to have this idea that transformation purely means it's something to do with race. Recently I saw a post, I'm not sure which university it was, but it says transformation equals racial discrimination. Now, just looking at transformation in itself in this country, in terms of race, okay, we're making progress, but let's look at gender, let's look at sexuality, and let's look at disability where we are nowhere. I think as someone that fits part of one of those minority groups, when it comes to disabilities, I feel like it's 50 million people in South Africa struggling with just mental illness, but the budget is 9 billion. So even it goes into even policy. So even transformation as a whole, I think we've made this mistake of thinking that transformation just means race. And if we're going to then look at our progress and measure it, how we're doing in terms of maybe numbers, in terms of how our race is doing, maybe we're doing well. But I fundamentally think that with all aspects of transformation, even in universities, we are like below 30%. Like we're not even there. We haven't even touched the surface if you're going to have all those other things put in place. I've once been in a space where there's been other SRC members, and as soon as I touched on something like sexuality, particular representatives didn't even want to just discuss it. So it means that there are universities in this country where, yes, we have in UCT, we've instituted a few policies with sexuality, and maybe one or two in disabilities, but it fundamentally means that there are other universities in this country that don't even touch on sexuality, don't even touch on gender, don't even discuss disability. So where are we in transformation if we're just making progress in race? So there's so much to be done.
Professor, in the last few seconds that we have left of this program, it's a much bigger problem. I can understand that. I mean, we've dealt with this on very, very many aspects of our society. We can't speak about, for example, the transformation of our economy if we don't deal with proper aspects dealing with our economy. But are we going to continue saying that? And while I recognize that, UCT certainly can't play catch-up, when society does decide to eventually transform itself.
Well, so here's a provocative thing to say to you. I don't think UCT is playing catch-up. I think UCT is playing a leading role, actually.
With 3 professors.
Within the country in terms of trying to understand all of these issues. And so from the way in which the university gets projected there as a bastion of backwardness in all kinds of ways, it's really important for the country to come to understand how inside of the university, despite all of these difficulties, so we concede over and over again that we have a long way to go. We will concede that over. We will say to you, we have problems. We will admit that. But to say to us that we're behind the curve is a misrepresentation of actually what's going on.
Right. Professor Crane Sodine, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Cape Town there, and he says that, it's an ongoing process, it's a complex problem facing issues more than just the University of Cape Town. Also on this program from the Student Representative Council was Thembelihle Nkayani, and she of course also joined us to talk about transformation since Rhodes has fallen just over 4 months ago. This was our conversation for this evening on Our City Matters. My name is Tashirik Trubad. You have a good night. Thank you so much for tuning in.